Certainly a plasterer at this level would never have put the lats on. That was the apprentice, that was your first job. After you learned to mix the stuff, you'd be allowed to put the lats up for the plasterer. His job, the master plasterer that did this, would have done very little of the initial work. He'd have set out the parameters. He'd have what we call today dotted and dabbed, where he would attempt to plumb the walls and range the walls. He didn't have a level, but what he did have was a square with a plumb bob hanging out of it that told him when the thing was plumb. You have to be fit to see the end product. You have to be fit to see that, for instance, all the modillions have to fit. You can't have a half a modillion finishing out on this side and a full one on this side. So part of our language includes phrases like pinch and squeeze, which is what you do in that situation there. You have to have a basic understanding of your material. You have to understand how it works. Lime, when it's burned, burns off the carbon dioxide, and the only way that lime can harden again is by reabsorbing the carbon from the atmosphere. So the man that plastered this knew all that from he was 15 or 16, first learned as an apprentice. Don't put too much water in the lime, it'll shrink. Don't put too much water in the mix, it'll shrink. Work it and work it and work it. So we have stuff on the board. What's in the stuff? We have lime and sand. And critically, we have hair. Why is the hair in the stuff? I need to know the answer to that. I need to understand my materials and how they work. There's a great debate about what hair was used. Today, we use horse hair, we use goat hair, we use whatever hair is available. So we have the lime, we have the sand, and we have the hair. We need to know why the hair is in it, because when I know why it's in it, it makes sense then. I know the proportion to put it in at. We should be starting with a mix of 2 or 2.5 sand to 1 lime, first coat. With the hair, and the very simple test for it, you put your trowel through it, you picked it up, shook it, the excess mortar shook off, and the hair hangs down. And there shouldn't be any more than 1/8 of an inch between the hairs. And it's amazingly accurate. It's incredible how you can do that and tell immediately. Your sand should be, here's the big one. I put my hand in sand, I feel it, and I know immediately whether it's right or wrong. I know that if it's full of silt, my heart is going to be broken with shrinkage. I know that if it's too clean, it's too greedy. Greedy means that I have to add more lime to the mix to get it to a workable mix. But why the hair? What's the hair about? The hair gives the lime a tensile strength that it wouldn't have naturally. Remember that lime is soft. Even the hardest day that it goes, it's still a soft, flexible material. And that hair allows movement, but without cracking, except that you have excessive movement. So we've lime, hair, and sand. Mixed in the proper proportion, not over wet, up on the board. We damp down the surface to stop it drying out too quickly, and we put on a coat. You have to understand your material. I have to understand what carbonation is and how it occurs. Carbonation is where the lime mix reabsorbs the carbon from the atmosphere. If I put on that big heavy coat, and you can do it and it will take, and it'll carbonate, I need to understand it'll only carbonate 10, 12 mil at a time. So the first 10 or 12 mil will carbonate, and what's left behind it will never, it'll pick up a bit, but it'll never carbonate. It'll never go back to its hard state. So I've now put a big hard shell on something that's dead behind it. That's why it's so important for me to understand that I put on a lot of thin coats with time between the coats to allow that carbonation to happen. Depending on the background, depending on the surface, depending on the weather conditions, I need to know whether to wet the material or not. Wetting the coat serves two purposes. First of all, when I splash it with a brush, it forces the air into a dry surface, helps it to carbonate. The mix also needs to crystallize. Water helps crystallization. If you put a piece under a microscope that's carbonating, that's set, you can physically see all the little crystals darting out and that's what binds the thing with the hair together. So we have a coat on everywhere, it's carbonated, we put a second coat on, and it doesn't really change. 2.5 to 1, start with a harder mix. I need to know that if I put a hard mix over a soft mix, it's going to delaminate. So I start with a harder layer, with a lime-richer layer, and I work out reducing the lime content in each coat till we come to the surface. And then we set out for our cornices. And the cornices, the molds here, I guarantee you, are set on a carcass. A carcass very simply means that I set up a framework in timber roughly to the shape of the cornice. That's covered with laths. The master, we always do that for ourselves because we'll put a huge amount of time and effort into getting that carcass. We make a model of the first bracket and we follow that slavishly then. It cuts down our material, it cuts down our time. It means that we have a nice even surface carbonating at the same rate all around the room. To differentiate between stuff that's cast on the bench and freehand work, I'm looking for inconsistencies in the work. So I'm taking two things that look exactly the same and I'm looking for the discrepancies, I'm looking for the differences. They'll be very slight, they'll be very subtle. But freehand work will never be 100% accurate. Cast work won't have any discrepancy in it. It's repeat, repeat, repeat of the same thing. So I look, for instance, over the door, and I look at the leaf either side, and I'm saying that very possibly is freehand. In fact, that is freehand because I can see now the discrepancies in it. I can see that that did not. I'm looking at the swag either side. Now again, the detail is blocked with paint, 200 odd years of paint. But that is very possibly freehand. In fact, it is freehand. I can see absolutely that it's freehand. Some of the tools needed in running that cornice or doing any of that decorative work, joint rules, which are flat pieces of steel cut off at an angle that allow you to get into the angle to finish the bits freehand that you can't run with the mold, and particularly small tools. If we take any piece, you can take it elaborate or you can take it very simple, like just one leaf on that wall there. How do we do that freehand? You key the background first of all. Then I take a bit of gauged putty, place it in place and start to carve it. And with the number of small tools. What are small tools? They're a tiny trowel, nearly like a point and trowel. From a point and trowel down to the very finest spoon-like, flexible, very specialized tools that allow you to work the plaster as it's going off. There's a great debate about whether this plaster work was modelled or carved. Clay, to me, is modelled. Clay won't set hard. Clay, it will eventually, but it gives you lots of time. You can model, you can press in, you can plaster, and particularly plaster doesn't take to hard plaster that well without a physical key. So we get down to where we're doing really delicate features, eyes or stuff like that. You can't model with plaster like you can model with clay. I prefer to think of it as adding too much plaster and carving back while it's still soft, while it's not while it's soft, while it's, there's a stage at which it works very well, where it has taken an initial set, but it actually hasn't taken its full set hard that we can't do anything with it.